The Australian 2016 census reported that 52% of Australians identified as Christian of some sort, 8% identified with a different religion, and 30% identified no religion. Additionally, aside from white Australians and Indigenous Australians, our largest cultural identity groups are from the UK, New Zealand, China, India, Philippines, Vietnam, Greece, Germany, Italy, South Africa, Malaysia, and Netherlands. Needless to say, each of these groups has particular funeral and body disposal needs to comply with their religious or cultural identities. These may differ from how the majority of Australians would choose to do things, but there's never one right way to approach death, and it is important to be aware of what other communities see as normal. So let's talk different approaches for body disposal in Australia. Indigenous Australians. With so many different communities spread out over such a big country, it was inevitable that different means of body disposal would emerge. Having spoken to many members of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations, it is apparent that simple burial and cremation are used most commonly today, along with elements of Aboriginal culture and ceremony, of course. Both methods were also used in the past, but so were many other methods. Outdoor funeral pyres were common in some communities. In other communities, loved ones were buried in two stages. First, they would leave them on an elevated platform outside for several months. Then, once there was only bones left, they would take them and paint them with red ochre. The painted bones could then be buried, placed in a significant location on the natural landscape, or carried with the family as a token of remembrance. But in today's world, what are some of the things that non-Indigenous people should know about Indigenous Australians' funerals and death? Firstly, and I cannot stress this enough, how much it differs between each community. So if you're close enough to the family that they've told you that a loved one has passed, it's probably okay to respectfully ask what the particular etiquette is in their community. But generally speaking, Indigenous funerals are a very communal affair and may be referred to as sorry business. They often go on for many weeks, and it's expected that family and the community at large will return to grieve and support each other. Because of this, it is very common for children to be taken out of school for long, extended periods of time, because family is of the utmost importance. Furthermore, it's considered unacceptable for a non-Indigenous person to break the news of an Indigenous death to a deceased family member. Also, in many communities, particularly in the Northern Territory, it is believed that you will disturb the deceased spirit if you say their name out loud or view their photo, so keep this in mind. Having worked in boarding schools with many Indigenous students and families, I've seen a lot of this etiquette firsthand. Some of this may be different from what you're used to, but it's not difficult to understand. If necessary, respectfully ask at an appropriate time what is okay and not to do and say. Islamic funeral. Our 2016 census showed that 2.6% of Australians identified as Muslim. And considering everyone I know personally, I really thought that number would be higher. But anyway, according to the census, those in this percentage are likely to identify culturally as Pakistani or Afghani, with smaller numbers from Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh and Nigeria. With the figures out of the way, let's talk about burial. Islam gives very exact steps and processes for how a deceased body should be dealt with. But the two things a non-Muslim person should be aware of about Islamic funerals is that they are dictated by modesty, so they must be as simple as possible. Secondly, the time between a person's death and their burial is super quick by comparison to a lot of groups, usually within 24 hours. After funeral prayers are said, the body is taken to the cemetery. Muslim graves are dug in a way that the body will be facing Mecca. The body is wrapped in a natural shroud, so no coffin, and must be lying directly on the ground. Typically, it is family members who will place the body in the ground, making sure that the deceased is placed on their right side, not flat on their back. They should put above the body a layer of wood so that the earth will not be put directly on the body when the grave is filled. Furthermore, running with the basic is better sentiment, it is not customary to have a tombstone, although a simple edge around the grave and a plaque at the head is acceptable to identify the grave. There is so much more ritual to a Muslim burial than this, and I encourage you to read the information that I put in the description below. Buddhist funeral. 2.4% of Australians identify as being Buddhist, mostly being of Chinese, Thai or Vietnamese descent. Traditionally, a Buddhist funeral will occur on the 3rd, 7th, 49th or 100th day after death. This is because Buddhists believe that a waiting period between the time of death and cremation or burial is necessary, as it takes time for the soul to transition after death. The length of time depends on which type of Buddhism was practiced by the deceased. Chanting and praying plays a vital role in the death process of a Buddhist. As a person lies dying, family members or monks often chant protective verses. After the person dies, the chanting continues to help ease the transition of the soul out of the body. Buddhism itself doesn't prescribe to any particular type of body disposal, and this is more informed by the personal cultural identity. Both burial and cremation are common, with cremated remains often being buried afterwards. If you're not Buddhist and you're attending a funeral, keep in mind that Buddhists believe in reincarnation, so don't go around mentioning ideas of the afterlife or going to a better place. Hindu funeral. 1.9% of Australians identify as Hindu, with the majority of these being of Indian or Nepalese descent. Hindu funerals, much like Muslim funerals, take place about 24 hours after death, so it's a real quick turnaround. The deceased family will sing hymns, recite prayers, and participate in the chanting of mantras. It is believed that these actions help create a positive energy that allows the soul to leave the body at its highest state. Caskets are almost always open at a Hindu funeral, and visitors should quietly view the body and then take a seat for the ceremony. Flowers and rice balls are placed around the body, and a lamp is placed near the head. Hindus believe that the soul lives on and is reincarnated, and so the body is cremated in order to release the soul. Most people will have seen pictures of the funeral pyres along the Ganges River in India where the religion originated, and the ashes are then scattered into the sacred waterway. Here in Australia, a general cremation is used, and the ashes can then be scattered as the family sees fit. If you're attending a Hindu funeral service, bear in mind that it's best to dress in casual white clothing, not smart black clothing as a lot of us are used to. No religion. With 30% of Australians citing no religion on the census, funeral practices are often based around spiritual and cultural elements. For example, we have a large Chinese population who follow a variety of religions, but their funeral follows predominantly culturally based practices. We were going to look at the different cultures within Australia, but quickly realised it may be simpler to look at the different religions and then mention which cultures may be part of this. If this channel ever takes off, I would really like to get some experts or community leaders on to talk about their religious and cultural practices regarding death. In the meantime, with such a high percentage identifying with no religion, maybe there is hope yet for our country to employ some alternative body disposal practices in the future. Every religion and culture has a particular view on what should happen with the dead. This video is simply to make you aware of what the largest minority groups in Australia do with their dead. So if you're ever in the situation where you're invited to be part of a funeral, or your work colleague has just suffered a loss, you will have some idea of what their normal looks like. Never assume that your way is the normal or right way. I will put some more links in the description below to help you do some more research, which you really should. And remember, every community is different, but so is every individual. Quietly and respectfully ask questions if you need to. Now, go talk death.